Max, what is the state of the bicycle industry?
State of the bicycle industry? It's a loaded question, my friend. Do you have 30 hours?
Dante, do you think you can summarize it for us quickly?
Yeah, so a duck laid an egg, and
Okay.
instead of it being a golden egg, it was actually just a turd. And you tried to pick it up with your bare hands.
So will the mountain bike industry turn into the car industry in 2025? Yes, that's a pretty bold question, but I wonder if the writing is sort of already on the wall. It's no secret that the bike industry has been struggling the past few years, and many brands from small to medium sized have had to cease production and shut their doors. So it's been a pretty tough time for newcomers into the industry. With the possibility of tariffs continuing to impact the cycling industry's diverse supply chain, it seems like the greener pastures of a stable bike industry are still far off. And that got me thinking about how the car industry isn't doing so hot these days either. Everyone complains about how expensive cars are, how expensive the insurance has become, and of course the cost of maintaining a car has gone up substantially. Unfortunately, it seems like both industries are experiencing a plateau in the evolution of what they have specialized in for decades. The car industry is betting on the long-term viability of electric cars versus their legacy internal combustion vehicles. In order to sell cars year after year, you need to convince people that the next model is substantially better, and currently that significant evolution is coming on the EV side and not the internal combustion side. Which sounds kind of familiar to how each new model year of bike doesn't really seem all that different from the previous model unless you're talking about e-bikes. So you still have to maintain the large portion of your brand, whether that's internal combustion or analog, but it is becoming harder to sell those internal combustion models because the technology is not significantly improving the experience for the end user. My car is still getting me from A to B pretty much the same way it did 5, 10, 15, dare I say 20 years ago. The experience that the end user is having has not changed that substantially. So think about the fuel economy of internal combustion vehicles, the acceleration, the noise, the emissions, the maintenance. There hasn't been much of an advancement over the past 5 years or so. Now think about the mountain bike industry. After 2020, pretty much every bike brand had an up-to-date lineup of capable bikes for every type of rider with pretty up-to-date geometry that people were pretty pleased with. I keep saying pretty. People start to hardly notice the difference between suspension performance on a year-to-model year basis. The bikes aren't getting lighter, cheaper, or substantially easier to maintain. Add in the e-bike portion, now most brands have had to expand their research and development, supply chains, and liabilities to cover a whole new aspect of the tech world with motors and batteries. In an environment where technology is rapidly evolving, the bike industry and car industry are stretching themselves thin to please essentially two markets under one umbrella, and you can see many brands are hurting. I feel like the biggest news in the bike industry is which brand has the strongest e-bike with the most range at the lowest weight, which inevitably will come at a 5-figure price tag, but that is the cost of being at the cutting edge, where currently each new e-bike becomes outdated after less than a year of being on the market. When so many companies are focused on keeping up with the Joneses in the e-bike world, I wonder how that impedes their efforts to make their production of analog bikes more efficient to lower those retail prices. This is a genuine question. I'm not trying to bash the e-bike side of mountain biking. I'm honestly curious how this will play out over the next few years, because I could see the bike industry turning into more of an oligopoly to protect against tough economic winds and allowing for certain brands to focus more intently on niches like cost-effective analog bikes, high-end analog bikes, and e-mountain bikes separately while still being under the safety net of the holding company. And it's no secret that some brands are already under holding companies like Santa Cruz and Cervelo, Cannondale, stuff like that. So it's definitely already in the industry to some extent. And to be clear, I'm not saying that I want this to happen, but I am wondering if that will be an outcome of these tough times post-COVID for the bike industry. All right, Dante. Speaking of bike industry, how much would you pay with your own hard-earned cash at most for a full suspension mountain bike?
How much would I pay? Diminishing returns happens around what is now 6,700. It used to be 5,000. It was diminishing returns starting after 5,000, but all the prices have gone up. So right now I'd probably pay $6,000 at most.
$6,000 at most. Wow. What about you, Max? Wow, very insightful.
Sorry. Well, okay, listen, I ain't buying a DH bike anytime soon. You walk out the door with that thing, it's like a car, half the value's gone. However, are we talking inside the industry and outside the industry?
Outside the industry with
Outside
your
the
own
industry.
cash.
As a normal, I don't know what that means, but well, I do
So
now.
elitist.
Pretentious.
Yeah, I don't really want to, because I mean, you can jump into carbon, and I kind of pulling parts off like old bikes to the next bike probably. But yeah, I'd say I really want to go over like 5,500. Really.
Yeah,
You
granted,
get good specs for that.
the bike I'm on is worth more than 6,000.
Right.
So I should shut up. But if I wanted a carbon enduro bike, the next step down on fork, like without the negative chambers and stuff like that, that's all fine.
Yeah.
You can get that.
But didn't you get that when you worked at a bike shop? Or you got some
I did,
discount?
but legally I'm not allowed to talk about that. So
Oh.
we're going to need to sign a contract before we get into this.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have NDAs back at the car. So to further round out this conversation, I polled my audience of 1,700 subscribers and got 14 responses to my question, which isn't exactly a great turnout, but how much did you pay for your most recent primary mountain bike purchase? And all the responses were $5,000 or less, with the slight majority going to under $2,500 or less. Obviously, I know a dozen people or so isn't a great sample size, but still I think it shows how much biking is worth to consumers these days. The solid base model analog bikes haven't really broken down below that $2,000 to $2,500 mark for the major brands, but the capability of those bikes has gone up due to geometry improvements. And the overall experience of a $5,000 mountain bike compared to a $10,000 mountain bike is pretty inconsequential. Now, my last thought on this topic will return back to comparing cars and bikes, because you may have realized that cars now feature so much technology that hides itself all over the vehicle to detect an insane amount of data. This makes it suddenly way more expensive than ever before to fix a fender bender, because your fender has 20 sensors in it that need to be strategically reconnected and calibrated, in addition to fixing the physical component of a bumper. I'm afraid e-bikes and analog bikes, by extension, could suffer a similar fate in the name of performance or just novelty. I think we see it with headset cable routing today, where it provides a minuscule benefit to the eye, yet costs more time and labor to fix the component that serves the exact same function. I think this could be taken a step further with e-bikes particularly. How does an e-bike get down to analog bike weight without integrating every single thing you can? Maybe the battery of your bike will now run your derailleur, and if it can do that, why not the dropper post? Maybe your suspension can be electronically monitored and controlled by a computer, powered by your battery. Now every separate electronic component can be wrapped into one, which might sound awesome to just charge one battery, but now you have no ability to fix your own equipment. Just like many auto repair shops don't want to touch Teslas, you might not be able to take your bicycle to any bike shop that isn't fully capable of running diagnostic tests on your bike. And it creates a different demand of servicing something that is strictly mechanical in nature versus completely electrical and computer based. In the grand scheme of things, I think that can run the risk of mountain bikes not being particularly user friendly in the woods when you have nothing but the multi-tool in your pack and a hand pump. Okay, so enough doom and gloom. I must reiterate that I like e-bikes and I think they are super fun and a great tool for cyclists. I'm just genuinely curious how the industry will evolve to maintain both types of bikes when it is pretty evident in my opinion that analog bikes are plateauing and even reverting back a little bit in the case of some geometry figures, while the capabilities of e-bikes are continuously improving at a crazy pace. So with that, hopefully you enjoyed this little discussion and thought experiment. And remember, stay venturing, my friends.